The morning light filtered through the dusty blinds of apartment 4B on Maple Street, casting long shadows across the cramped living room where Maya Chen sat frozen, staring at a crumpled hospital bracelet in her trembling hands. The plastic band, yellowed with age, bore a name that wasn't hers: Baby Girl Rodriguez, D.O.B., March 15, 1998, Cedar Ridge General Hospital. 26 years. 26 years of living what she thought was her life, loving the family she thought was hers, carrying the dreams and fears of a woman she thought she was. But this small piece of plastic, discovered just moments ago in her deceased mother's jewelry box while settling the estate, was about to unravel everything she believed about her existence. Maya's hands shook as she compared the bracelet to her own birth certificate lying on the coffee table. Same date, same hospital, different name. The room seemed to tilt around her as a single impossible thought took root in her mind. What if she wasn't Maya Chen at all?
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
The story of Maya's discovery began 3 weeks earlier in the sterile corridors of Riverside Memorial Hospital, where she worked as a pediatric nurse in Seattle. It was a Tuesday morning that started like any other, with the familiar rhythm of checking vitals, administering medications, and comforting frightened children. Maya had always felt a natural calling to care for others, especially children, a trait her mother, Linda Chen, had always attributed to Maya's generous heart. Linda Chen had raised Maya as a single mother after Maya's father allegedly left when she was just 2 years old. It was a story Maya had heard countless times growing up. How her father, David Chen, couldn't handle the responsibility of parenthood and simply vanished one day, leaving behind only a forwarding address that led nowhere. Linda had worked double shifts at a textile factory to support them both, sacrificing her own dreams to ensure Maya could pursue an education and build a better life. Their small apartment in Seattle's International District had been filled with love, despite the financial struggles. Linda, a petite woman with weathered hands and kind eyes, had immigrated from Taiwan in the early 1990s, speaking broken English but possessing an unwavering determination to create opportunities for her daughter. She taught Maya Mandarin on weekends, cooked traditional dishes that filled their home with the sense of her homeland, and instilled in her daughter the values of hard work, respect, and family loyalty. Maya had always felt slightly different from other Asian American families in their neighborhood. While she inherited her mother's dark hair and small frame, her facial features seemed softer, her skin tone slightly different. When she questioned these differences as a teenager, Linda would simply smile and say, "You got the best of both your father and me. Beauty comes in many forms, my dear." The morning that would change everything began when Maya received a phone call during her break. Linda had collapsed at work and was being rushed to the emergency room at Seattle General. Maya's supervisor immediately granted her leave, and she spent the next week shuttling between the hospital and her mother's bedside, watching the woman who had been her anchor slowly slip away from a sudden heart attack. Linda Chen died on a rainy Thursday afternoon, holding Maya's hand and whispering final words of love in a mixture of English and Mandarin. "Be strong, my precious daughter. Find your truth, but never forget who raised you to be the beautiful person you are." At the time, Maya thought her mother's last words were simply encouragement to continue living fully despite the grief. She had no idea they held a deeper, more complex meaning. The weeks following Linda's death became a blur of funeral arrangements, condolence visits from neighbors, and the overwhelming task of sorting through a lifetime of possessions. Maya's small circle of friends rallied around her, particularly her best friend since nursing school, Jessica Martinez, and her boyfriend of 2 years, Alex Thompson, a social worker who specialized in family reunification cases. Alex had been especially supportive, helping Maya navigate the legal paperwork and estate settlement. His professional experience with complex family situations made him invaluable during this difficult time, though Maya noticed he seemed unusually thoughtful whenever she mentioned feeling disconnected from her extended family or her struggles to locate any relatives from her father's side. The Chen family seemed to exist in isolation. Linda had always claimed that her own family back in Taiwan had disowned her for leaving, and that David's family wanted nothing to do with Maya after his departure. This isolation had never bothered Maya much. Linda's love had always felt sufficient. But now, facing grief alone, she found herself yearning for a larger support system. It was Jessica who suggested that Maya might find comfort in connecting with her cultural heritage by going through Linda's personal belongings more thoroughly. Sometimes, she had said, our parents keep things that connect us to parts of ourselves we didn't even know existed. Maya had resisted initially. Linda had been a minimalist by necessity, and Maya couldn't imagine finding anything particularly revelatory among her modest possessions. But as the loneliness of the empty apartment grew overwhelming, she finally decided to systematically go through every drawer, box, and hidden corner of the home she'd shared with her mother. The jewelry box had been tucked away in the back corner of Linda's closet, beneath a stack of old photo albums. It was a simple wooden box, nothing fancy, but Maya had never seen it before. Linda rarely wore jewelry, just her simple wedding ring from a marriage Maya had always been told ended badly. Inside the box, Maya found a collection of items that painted a picture of her mother she'd never known. A birth certificate for Linda, with a birthplace listed as Los Angeles, not Taiwan. A bundle of letters addressed to My Dearest Lin in English, not the Chinese correspondence Maya expected. Photographs of Linda as a young woman standing next to a tall Latino man Maya had never seen before. And most mysteriously, a baby hospital bracelet that didn't match Maya's birth certificate. The bracelet read, Baby Girl Rodriguez, born March 15th, 1998, at Cedar Ridge General Hospital in Bakersfield, California. Maya had been born March 15th, 1998, according to her birth certificate, but at Seattle General Hospital to parents listed as Linda and David Chen. Maya's hands trembled as she held both documents side by side. The dates matched perfectly, but nothing else made sense. Why would her mother have kept a hospital bracelet for a different baby? And why had Linda always told Maya she was born in Seattle when this bracelet suggested a completely different location? The photographs in the box showed Linda looking young and radiant, but the settings were clearly Southern California, palm trees, desert landscapes, and architecture Maya recognized from movies but had never seen in person. In several photos, Linda was noticeably pregnant, standing next to the same Latino man who appeared throughout the collection. He was tall, with kind eyes, and in every image he gazed at Linda with obvious adoration. At the bottom of the box, Maya found a letter addressed simply to My Baby Girl in Linda's handwriting, but it had never been opened. The envelope was sealed and yellowed with age. Maya's heart pounded as she debated whether to read what was clearly meant to be a private message. Finally, sitting on her mother's bed, surrounded by the fragments of a life she was only now beginning to understand, Maya carefully opened the letter. Linda's familiar handwriting filled 2 pages with words that would haunt Maya for days to come. My precious daughter, if you are reading this, then I am no longer here to explain the choices I made when you were born. I pray that you will understand that everything I did was out of love for you and love for another mother who was suffering just as much as I was. The truth is complicated, and I carried the secret to protect you from pain I thought you were too young to bear. But you deserve to know where you came from, and you deserve the chance to find the family that has been looking for you all these years. The bracelet will lead you to answers, but please remember that genetics don't determine who you are, love does, and you have been loved every single day of your life. The letter continued with instructions Maya could barely comprehend through her shock and tears. Linda had arranged for a safety deposit box at First National Bank, containing additional documents and information that would help Maya understand her origins. The key was taped to the bottom of the jewelry box. Maya sat in stunned silence as the implications began to sink in. Her entire identity, her name, her family history, her understanding of where she belonged in the world, everything was potentially built on a lie. But more than that, Linda's letter suggested that somewhere out there, another family had been searching for her for 26 years. The woman she had called Mother, who had loved her unconditionally and sacrificed everything for her happiness, had apparently been keeping a secret so profound that it called into question every fundamental truth of Maya's existence. And yet, even in death, Linda's primary concern was Maya's emotional well-being and her understanding that love transcends biology. As the sun set outside the apartment window, Maya realized she stood at the threshold of a mystery that would either destroy everything she thought she knew about herself or lead her to a truth that might finally explain the sense of incompleteness she had carried her entire life without understanding why.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
But it was the smaller jewelry box that contained the most shocking revelation of all. Inside, Maya found a birth certificate, her original birth certificate, listing her name as Isabella Maria Rodriguez. Attached to it was a handwritten note from Linda that would change Maya's understanding of everything. My dearest Maya, I know this will be impossible to understand, but I need you to know that I never intended to keep you from your family forever. 26 years ago, I was working as a cleaning lady at Cedar Ridge General Hospital. I had lost my own baby 3 months earlier, a son I had carried for 8 months before losing him to complications I couldn't afford to treat properly. The grief was destroying me. The night you were born, I was cleaning the maternity ward when I saw your mother, Carmen, sleeping peacefully with you in her arms. You were so beautiful, so perfect, and for a moment I allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to hold my own child again. I only meant to look at you more closely, to remember what I had lost, but when I picked you up, you opened your eyes and looked at me with such trust, such need, and something broke inside me. I told myself I was saving you from a life of poverty like mine, that I could give you opportunities your teenage parents couldn't provide. I convinced myself that taking you was an act of love, not theft. By the time I realized the magnitude of what I had done, we had already moved to Seattle, I had created new documents, and you were calling me Mama. Every day for 26 years, I planned to tell you the truth. Every day, I convinced myself that one more day of your happiness was worth the lie. I taught you to be kind, honest, and compassionate because I hoped that when you learned about my deception, you would understand that good people sometimes make terrible choices for reasons that feel like love at the time. Your biological parents never stopped looking for you. I followed the news coverage for years, and I saw how my decision destroyed their lives. Carmen Rodriguez attempted suicide twice in the first 5 years after losing you. Miguel Santos spent every spare dollar he earned hiring private investigators and putting up reward posters. They had 3 other children after you disappeared, 2 sons and a daughter, but Carmen told a reporter once that having other children couldn't fill the hole left by the daughter who was stolen from her arms. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I am begging you to find them. Not for me, but for them. And for yourself. You have a family that has been mourning you for your entire life. You have siblings who grew up knowing they had a sister they'd never met. You have grandparents who kept a room prepared for your return, even after all these years. The documents in this box will help you find them if you choose to. I have also included the contact information for the private investigator they hired most recently, a woman named Maya Chen, no relation, despite the last name, who is still actively working their case. She has been looking for you for the past 5 years. I loved you the best way I knew how, but I stole you from people who loved you first and who deserved to watch you grow up. I am so sorry, my beautiful daughter.
I am sorry for the lies, sorry for the pain I caused, and sorry that I was too much of a coward to tell you this while I was alive to face your anger and disappointment.
Please don't let my selfishness rob you of more time with your real family. They have waited long enough. Maya's sobs echoed through the small bank vault as the full weight of Linda's confession settled over her. The woman who had raised her, who had sacrificed everything for her happiness, who had been her entire world, that woman had kidnapped her as an infant and spent 26 years living a lie that destroyed another family's life. But even through her shock and anger, Maya could hear the genuine remorse in Linda's words, could recognize the twisted logic that had allowed a grief-stricken woman to convince herself that stealing someone else's baby was somehow an act of love. Linda had been wrong, monumentally, unforgivably wrong, but she had also loved Maya completely and raised her to be a person of integrity and compassion. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that her chosen profession involved caring for children, reuniting them with worried parents, ensuring they received the love and protection they deserved. She had been drawn to pediatric nursing without ever knowing that she herself was a missing child whose parents had never stopped searching for her. Mrs. Henderson knocked gently on the vault door. "Miss Chen, is everything all right in there?" Maya wiped her eyes and carefully placed all the documents back in the folder. "Yes, I'm fine. Just some unexpected family history." As she walked out of the bank and into the bright Seattle afternoon, Maya realized that everything had changed in the space of an hour. She was no longer Maya Chen, orphan daughter of a Taiwanese immigrant and an absent father. She was Isabella Rodriguez, the missing baby whose disappearance had been featured in newspapers and true crime documentaries. The daughter whose absence had haunted a family for 26 years. In her purse, she carried the business card for Sarah Chen, the private investigator who was still actively searching for her. Maya stared at the card as she sat in her car, engine running, but nowhere to go. One phone call would connect her to the family she'd never known she had. One conversation would end their decades of wondering and begin her own journey toward understanding who she really was. But it would also mean confronting the reality that the woman she'd loved as a mother had committed one of the most devastating crimes imaginable, stealing a baby from its parents' arms and building a life on that foundation of lies and heartbreak. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Alex asking if she wanted to grab dinner. She stared at the message, realizing that even her closest relationships were built on a false identity. How do you tell your boyfriend that you've just discovered you're not the person he fell in love with? How do you explain to your best friend that your entire life story is a fiction? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot, Maya knew she stood at a crossroads that would determine not just her future, but the future of everyone she loved, both the family that raised her and the family that had been searching for her all these years.
Maya sat in her car outside the bank for 20 minutes, staring at Sarah Chen's business card until the numbers blurred together. The private investigator's office was located in downtown Seattle, just 15 minutes away. One phone call, one meeting, and she could set in motion events that would reunite her with a family that had been mourning her for 26 years. But she could also destroy the carefully constructed life she'd built around Linda's lies. Instead of calling Sarah Chen immediately, Maya found herself driving to the one place that had always brought her clarity, the pediatric ward at Riverside Memorial Hospital where she worked. Even though she was technically on bereavement leave, the familiar sounds and smells of the hospital environment helped her think more clearly than anywhere else. She badged in through the staff entrance and made her way to the break room, hoping to find it empty. Instead, she discovered her colleague and friend, Dr. Amanda Foster, catching up on patient charts during her dinner break. Amanda looked up with surprise and concern. "Maya? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be taking time to grieve, not coming back to work already."
Maya slumped into the chair across from Amanda, suddenly desperate to talk to someone she trusted. Amanda, can I ask you something hypothetical? As someone who works with families every day, what would you do if you discovered that your entire identity was built on someone else's tragedy? Amanda set down her pen and gave Maya her full attention. As a pediatric surgeon who had handled countless family crises, she had learned to recognize when someone was carrying a burden too heavy to bear alone. That's quite a hypothetical question. Are we talking about medical mix-ups, identity theft, something more complex? Maya pulled out the folder of documents she'd been carrying since leaving the bank. What if I told you that I just discovered I was kidnapped as a baby, and the woman who raised me left me a confession letter after she died? What if there's a family out there that has been looking for me for my entire life, and I have the power to end their suffering with one phone call? Amanda's eyes widened as Maya spread some of the newspaper clippings across the break room table. The headlines told their own story, and Amanda's medical training helped her quickly piece together the implications of what Maya was sharing. My God, Maya, are you saying that Are you Isabella Rodriguez, the Cedar Ridge baby that went missing in 1998? According to these documents, yes. Linda, my mother, or the woman I thought was my mother, she worked as a cleaning lady at the hospital where I was born. She had lost her own baby a few months earlier, and she stole me. She stole me from my biological parents while they slept. Amanda reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. This explains so much about you, you know? The way you are with our patients' families, how you seem to understand the desperation of parents waiting for news about their children. You've been unconsciously living the other side of your own story your entire life. Maya hadn't considered that connection before, but Amanda was right. Her career choice, her instinctive understanding of family dynamics, her ability to comfort parents in crisis, it all made sense when viewed through the lens of her true identity. But here's what I don't understand, Maya continued. Linda loved me completely. She sacrificed everything for me, worked herself to exhaustion to give me opportunities, taught me right from wrong. How do I reconcile that love with the fact that she built our entire relationship on stolen moments that belonged to another family? Amanda was quiet for a long moment, considering the complexity of Maya's situation. I've seen a lot of families in crisis, Maya. I've seen parents make desperate decisions when they're drowning in grief or fear. What Linda did was unforgivable. I'm not minimizing that. But people are capable of holding contradictory truths simultaneously. She could love you completely while also being terribly wrong about how she came to have you. There's more, Maya said, pulling out the business card. There's a private investigator who's still actively working my case. The Rodriguez family, my biological family, they hired her 5 years ago. They're still looking for me. They never gave up.
Amanda studied the business card. Maya Chen. I've heard of her. She has a reputation for reuniting families. Maya, you realize that if you make this call, everything changes, right? Not just for you, but for everyone in your life. Alex, Jessica, your coworkers, everyone who knows you as Maya Chen. That's what terrifies me. What if I contact my biological family and they're disappointed in who I've become? What if 26 years of building up this fantasy of their lost daughter means the real me can't possibly measure up? And what about the people who love Maya Chen? Do I just stop being her? Amanda leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. You know what I tell parents when they're facing impossible medical decisions about their children? I tell them that love isn't about protecting people from difficult truths. It's about giving them the information they need to make their own choices. Your biological parents deserve to know that you're alive and well, and the people who love Maya Chen deserve to know the real person they've been loving all along. Maya's phone buzzed with another text from Alex. This time, instead of asking about dinner, he wrote, "Saw your car in the hospital parking lot. Everything okay? I know you're processing a lot right now, but please don't shut me out. Whatever you're going through, we can handle it together." Reading Alex's message, Maya realized that Amanda was right about one crucial point. The people who loved her deserved to know the truth, even if it was complicated and painful. But she also realized that she needed to understand her own story more completely before she could share it with others. "Amanda, I need to ask you for a favor. I need to take a leave of absence from work. Not bereavement leave, but something longer. I need time to figure out who I am and what I want to do with this information." "Of course. How long are you thinking?" "I don't know. Maybe a few months? I need to decide whether to contact my biological family, and if I do, I need time to navigate whatever comes next. But I also need to understand more about Linda's story. The documents she left behind, they don't explain everything. How did she create false documents? How did she know enough about the hospital's security to avoid getting caught? There are pieces of this puzzle that don't add up." Amanda nodded slowly. "You're thinking like an investigator now. That's good. You need facts, not just emotions, to guide your decisions." Maya gathered up the documents and carefully placed them back in the folder. "I'm going to call Sarah Chen tomorrow morning. Not to tell her I'm Isabella Rodriguez, not yet, but to ask her about the case. I want to understand what the Rodriguez family has been through, what their lives look like now, before I decide whether inserting myself into their world is the right thing to do." That sounds like a reasonable first step. But Maya, can I give you one more piece of advice? Don't try to carry this alone. Talk to Alex, talk to Jessica. Give the people who love you the chance to support you through this. And remember that discovering your true identity doesn't erase the person you've become. Isabella Rodriguez and Maya Chen aren't mutually exclusive. You're both, and that's okay. As Maya left the hospital and drove home through the dark Seattle streets, she felt something she hadn't experienced since finding Linda's letter. A sense of purpose and direction. She had made her first real decision about how to move forward, and while it terrified her, it also felt like the beginning of taking control of her own story. Back in her apartment, Maya sat down at her computer and began composing an email to her supervisor, requesting an extended leave of absence. Then she opened a new document and started writing down everything she knew about her situation, organizing the facts and identifying the gaps in her knowledge that needed to be filled. At the top of a fresh page, she wrote, "Questions that need answers before I decide what to do next." The list grew quickly. Who was Linda Chen before she came to Seattle? How did she obtain false documents? Did anyone else know about the kidnapping? What kind of people are Carmen and Miguel Rodriguez now? Do I have siblings? What has this loss done to their family over the years? Can families really recover from this kind of trauma? But at the bottom of the list, she wrote the question that scared her most. Am I prepared for the possibility that learning the truth about my identity might be the most difficult thing I've ever done, but also the most important? Maya looked around the small apartment where she had lived as Maya Chen, at the photos of her and Linda, at the life she had built on a foundation of lies and love. Tomorrow, she would begin the process of discovering who Isabella Rodriguez was meant to become. Tonight, she would say goodbye to the simpler world where she only had one identity, one family, and one set of truths to navigate. She picked up her phone and, before she could second-guess herself, sent a text to Alex. "Can you come over? I need to tell you something important about my family. It's complicated, but I need you to know the truth." His response came immediately. "On my way. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together."
Maya smiled through her tears. Amanda had been right. Love wasn't about protecting people from difficult truths. It was about trusting them to handle those truths with compassion and understanding. And Maya was finally ready to start trusting the people she loved with the most difficult truth of all.
Maya's hands trembled as she dialed Sarah Chen's number the next morning. She had rehearsed her approach dozens of times, but when the private investigator's crisp voice answered on the second ring, Maya's carefully planned words evaporated. Chen Investigations, this is Sarah speaking. Hi, my name is Maya Chen, no relation, and I'm calling about the Isabella Rodriguez case. I'm a journalist working on a piece about long-term missing persons cases, and I was wondering if I could interview you about your investigation. The lie came out more smoothly than Maya had expected, though it left a bitter taste in her mouth. She had spent the previous evening with Alex, revealing everything about her discovery and Linda's confession. His initial shock had given way to unwavering support, but he had also warned her about the complexity of what lay ahead. The Rodriguez case, Sarah Chen repeated, and Maya could hear papers rustling in the background. I appreciate your interest, but that's an active investigation. I can't discuss specifics with media without client approval. I understand completely, but could you tell me anything about the family's current situation? How they're coping after all these years? I'm particularly interested in the psychological impact of long-term uncertainty on families. There was a long pause before Sarah responded. I can tell you that the Rodriguez family has never stopped believing their daughter is alive. Carmen and Miguel have dedicated their lives to finding Isabella. They've mortgaged their house 3 times to pay for investigations, moved to different states following leads that went nowhere, and maintained a shrine in their home for 26 years. They have other children now, twins born in 2001 and a daughter born in 2005. But Carmen still sets a place at the table for Isabella during family dinners. Maya's breath caught. She had siblings, 3 of them. The reality of an entire family structure she'd never known about hit her like a physical blow. That's incredibly dedicated, Maya managed to say. It's more than dedicated. It's become their entire existence. Miguel works 2 jobs to fund the investigation. He's a master mechanic during the day and teaches guitar lessons in the evenings. Carmen became a teacher, like she'd always planned, but she specializes in helping children who've experienced trauma. She says she'll understand her own daughter's experience better when Isabella comes home. Maya closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the image of Carmen Rodriguez shaping her entire career around the hope of reuniting with a stolen daughter. Have there been any recent developments in the case? Actually, yes. We recently received some interesting information from a deathbed confession. A woman in Seattle claimed she had information about Isabella's disappearance, but she died before we could interview her. We're trying to track down her family members now. Maya's heart stopped. Linda's confession had somehow reached the investigation team, but they didn't yet know the full truth. What kind of information? Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I can't get into specifics, but it suggests that Isabella may have been taken by someone who worked at the hospital. We're reviewing employment records from 1998, cross-referencing them with people who moved to the Pacific Northwest around that time. It's painstaking work, but it's the first real lead we've had in years. Maya realized she was in an impossible position. The investigators were closing in on Linda's identity, which would eventually lead them to Maya herself. She could either reveal herself now or wait to be discovered, but she also understood that she needed more information before making such a life-altering decision. Miss Chen, hypothetically speaking, if Isabella Rodriguez were found alive today, what kind of support systems would be in place to help her integrate back into her biological family's life? Sarah's tone became more guarded. That's an interesting question for a journalist to ask. Are you working on this story for personal reasons? Maya panicked and ended the call, claiming she had another interview to get to.
She sat in her car outside a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, realizing that her amateur attempt at investigation probably raised red flags with a professional investigator. Her phone rang almost immediately. The caller ID showed Sarah Chen's number. "Miss Chen," Sarah's voice was gentler now, "I've been doing this work for 15 years, and I can tell when someone is asking questions for personal reasons rather than professional ones. If you have information about Isabella Rodriguez, please don't try to handle this alone. This family has suffered enough." Maya felt tears streaming down her face. I can't. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called." "Wait, don't hang up. Whatever you're dealing with, there are people who can help. If you know something about this case, or if you're concerned that you might be connected to it somehow, please consider coming in to talk, not for an interview, but just to talk." After ending the call, Maya realized she needed a different approach. She couldn't investigate her own story while pretending to be someone else. It was too complicated and emotionally overwhelming. But she was also not ready to walk into the Rodriguez family's life and announce that their missing daughter had been found.
That afternoon, Maya drove to the Seattle Public Library and spent hours researching everything she could find about the Rodriguez family online. What she discovered painted a picture of people who had channeled their grief into purpose. Miguel Santos had started a nonprofit organization called Never Forgotten that provided resources for families of missing children. Carmen Rodriguez had written a blog for parents of missing children, sharing coping strategies and maintaining hope. Reading Carmen's blog entries was both heartbreaking and inspiring. She wrote about the guilt of having other children while Isabella was still missing, the struggle to celebrate birthdays and holidays when one family member was absent, and the constant balance between hope and grief. But she also wrote about the joy her other children brought to her life, and her determination to make sure they knew they were loved completely, not just as placeholders for their missing sister. One blog entry from Isabella's 25th birthday particularly affected Maya. "Today, my first baby would have turned 25. I wonder if she likes chocolate cake like her sister Sophia does, or if she inherited her father's love of spicy food like the twins. I wonder if she's in college, or if she's already started a career. Does she have friends who make her laugh? Has she fallen in love? Does she sometimes feel like something is missing from her life, the way I feel like part of my heart has been walking around outside my body for 25 years? Today, I'm choosing to believe that wherever Isabella is, she's happy. I'm choosing to believe that she's surrounded by love, even if it's not our love. I'm choosing to believe that someday, somehow, we'll have the chance to tell her how proud we are of the woman she's become and how grateful we are to whoever kept her safe all these years." Maya had to stop reading as sobs racked her body. Carmen Rodriguez was not only grateful to the person who had kept Isabella safe, she was grateful to Linda, the woman who had stolen her baby and caused her family decades of anguish. That evening, Maya met with Jessica Martinez at their favorite restaurant. Maya had decided that she needed to tell the people closest to her about her discovery before taking any further steps. Jessica's reaction was immediate and intense. "Maya, you have to contact them immediately. Can you imagine what they've been going through? Every day not knowing if their daughter is alive or dead?" "But Jess, it's more complicated than that. What if I contact them and it destroys the family they've built? They have 3 other children who've grown up with the shadow of their missing sister. What if my sudden appearance disrupts their lives in ways that cause more harm than good?" Jessica leaned forward intensely. "Are you seriously considering not telling them? Maya, you're talking about a family that has spent 26 years looking for you. You don't have the right to decide what's best for them. They deserve the chance to make their own choices about having you in their lives. And what about Linda? If I come forward, she'll be exposed as a kidnapper. Her memory will be destroyed, her reputation ruined. She's dead, Jess. She can't defend herself or explain her actions. Linda made her choices, Maya. She chose to steal a baby and live alive for 26 years. The consequences of those choices don't disappear just because she's no longer alive to face them." Maya realized that Jessica was right about one crucial point. She didn't have the right to decide what was best for the Rodriguez family. But she was also beginning to understand that revealing her identity would have far-reaching consequences that went beyond just her and her biological family.
That night, Maya called Alex and asked him to come over again. When he arrived, she showed him everything she'd learned about the Rodriguez family, the blog entries, the newspaper articles, the nonprofit organization Miguel had started. Alex, I need your professional opinion. You work with family reunification cases all the time. What happens when a family structure that has been built around trauma and loss suddenly has to adapt to resolution? Can a family really recover from something like this? Alex studied the materials Maya had gathered, his expression growing more serious as he read Carmen's blog entries and learned about the family's decades-long search. Maya, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This kind of reunion is unprecedented in my experience. Most of the families I work with are dealing with recent separations, months or a few years at most. 26 years is an entire lifetime. The Rodriguez family has built their identity around Isabella's absence. Your siblings have grown up with the weight of having a missing sister. Your parents have structured their entire adult lives around finding you. So, you think it would be too disruptive? No, I think it would be the most difficult and the most important thing that could happen to them. But Maya, you can't control the outcome. You can't manage their reactions or guarantee that everything will work out perfectly. All you can do is give them the truth and trust that they're strong enough to handle it. As Alex held her while she cried that night, Maya realized she had learned something crucial about herself and her situation. She couldn't investigate her way into certainty about what the right decision was. She couldn't gather enough information to guarantee a perfect outcome. She could only choose between letting the Rodriguez family continue their search indefinitely or giving them the answer they had been seeking for 26 years. The choice, she was beginning to understand, wasn't really a choice at all.
2 weeks after her conversation with Maya Chen, Maya received a phone call that changed everything. She was in her apartment, still wrestling with the decision of whether to reveal her identity, when her phone rang with an unknown California number. "Is this Maya Chen?" The voice was female, middle-aged, with a slight Spanish accent that made Maya's heart skip. "Yes, this is Maya. My name is Carmen Rodriguez. I believe you called my private investigator recently asking about my daughter Isabella." Maya's legs gave out and she sank onto her couch. Carmen Rodriguez, her biological mother, had somehow tracked her down. The moment Maya had been both dreading and longing for was happening without her control. How did you find me?" Maya Chen is very good at her job. When someone calls asking suspicious questions about a case, she investigates. Your phone number led her to your address led her to your employment records, and your employment records showed something interesting. You're a pediatric nurse who was born on March 15th, 1998. Maya's hands shook as she gripped the phone. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I can explain." "Please, call me Carmen. And you don't need to explain anything yet. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you have a birthmark on your left shoulder that looks like a small crescent moon?" Maya unconsciously touched her shoulder. She had always been self-conscious about that birthmark, often covering it with makeup or clothing. "Yes, I do." The sound that came through the phone was half sob, half laugh. "Isabella. My God, it's really you. We found you. After 26 years, we found you." "Carmen, I need you to know that I only found out about this 2 weeks ago. The woman who raised me, Linda Chen, she left me documents after she died that explained everything. I had no idea I was taken from you. I thought I was Maya Chen my entire life." "I know, sweetheart, I know. Sarah found Linda's medical records. She had lost a baby just a few months before you were born. I can't imagine the grief she must have been feeling. I don't forgive what she did, but I think I understand why she did it." Maya was stunned by Carmen's compassion. After 26 years of searching, after decades of not knowing if her daughter was alive or dead, Carmen's first instinct was to try to understand the woman who had taken her baby. "There's something else you need to know. I'm here in Seattle. I flew up yesterday with my husband, Miguel, your father. We've been staying at a hotel downtown, hoping we'd have the courage to contact you. Sarah found your address 3 days ago, but we've been sitting in the hotel room terrified that if we called you, you might not want to see us." "You're here? In Seattle?"
We've been here before, actually. Over the years, we've followed several leads that brought us to the Pacific Northwest. We always hoped that whoever took you had brought you somewhere beautiful, where you could have a good life. When we learned you were living here and working as a nurse, helping children, Isabella, we are so proud of the woman you've become. Maya began crying, overwhelmed by the kindness in Carmen's voice. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be Isabella Rodriguez. I've been Maya Chen my entire life. You don't have to stop being Maya Chen, sweetheart. You can be both. You can be whoever you need to be. We just want the chance to know you, to be part of your life in whatever way feels right to you. Would it be okay if I came to see you at your hotel? Of course. We're at the Fairmont Olympic, room 1247. But Isabella, Maya, if you're not ready, if you need more time, we can wait. We've been waiting for 26 years. We can wait longer if you need us to. No, Maya said firmly. I can't wait anymore. I need to see you. I need to know where I came from.
2 hours later, Maya stood outside room 1247 at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She had changed clothes 3 times, trying to decide what someone wears to meet their biological parents for the first time. Finally, she had settled on a simple blue dress that Linda had always said brought out her eyes. When the door opened, Maya found herself looking at a woman who was unmistakably her mother. Carmen Rodriguez had Maya's same nose, the same curve to her smile, the same way of tilting her head when she was emotional. But what struck Maya most was the way Carmen's eyes filled with tears the moment she saw her. "Isabella," Carmen whispered, reaching out tentatively, as if Maya might disappear if she moved too quickly. Behind Carmen stood a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes, the same eyes Maya saw in her own mirror every morning. Miguel Santos looked exactly like the man in the old photographs from Linda's jewelry box, just aged by 26 years of searching and hoping. "Hi," Maya said awkwardly, unsure of the protocol for meeting parents she'd never known existed. Carmen stepped forward and gently took Maya's hands. "May I hug you? I've dreamed of hugging my daughter for 26 years. Maya nodded, and Carmen wrapped her in an embrace that felt both foreign and familiar. Maya had inherited her mother's small frame, and fitting into Carmen's arms felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. Miguel joined the embrace, and for several minutes the 3 of them stood in the hotel doorway, crying and holding each other. Finally, Carmen invited Maya into the room, where she saw something that took her breath away. The hotel room had been transformed into a shrine. The walls were covered with photographs, pictures of Maya as a baby before she disappeared, age progression photos showing what investigators thought she might look like at various ages, and photographs of the Rodriguez family through the years. But what affected Maya most were the birthday cakes in the photos. 26 years worth of birthday celebrations for a daughter who wasn't there to blow out the candles. "We celebrated every birthday," Miguel explained, his voice thick with emotion. "Carmen would bake your favorite cake, we had to guess what flavor you might like, and we'd sing happy birthday and make wishes for your safe return." On the hotel room table sat a carefully wrapped present with a tag that read, "For Isabella's 26th birthday from Mom and Dad." "We brought this with us," Carmen said. "We bring you a present every time we travel looking for you. It seemed important to have it here in case we found you." Maya picked up the present with trembling hands. Inside, she found a beautiful silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a crescent moon, the same shape as her birthmark. "We had this made when you were 6 months old," Miguel explained. "It was supposed to be your first Christmas present. We've been carrying it with us for 26 years, waiting for the right moment to give it to you." As Maya held the necklace, she realized she was experiencing something she had never understood before, the feeling of being claimed by people who had never stopped loving her. Linda had loved her completely, but that love had been built on a foundation of secrecy and lies. This love,
Carmen and Miguel's love had been constant and unwavering even when they didn't know if she was alive or dead. "I need to tell you about Linda," Maya said, sitting down on the hotel room couch. "She wasn't a monster. She was a woman who had lost everything and made a terrible decision in a moment of overwhelming grief. She loved me, and she raised me to be a good person. I don't want you to hate her." Carmen and Miguel exchanged a look before Carmen spoke. "We don't hate her, Isabella. We've spent years in therapy trying to understand what could drive someone to take a baby from their parents. When we learned about her own loss, it helped us make sense of something that never made sense before. We're grateful that she loved you, even though we'll never forgive her for taking you from us." "What about my siblings?" Maya asked. "How do they feel about suddenly having a sister?" Miguel smiled for the first time since Maya had arrived. "They've known about you their entire lives. Your bedroom in our house has been waiting for you since before they were born. They grew up looking at your baby pictures, helping us search for you, praying for your safe return. They're not here because we didn't want to overwhelm you, but they're desperate to meet you. Carlos and Diego are 23 now. They're twins. They both became police officers because they wanted to help find missing people like you. And Sophia's 19, in college, studying social work. She says she wants to help families like ours who have been torn apart by tragedy." Maya realized that her disappearance hadn't just affected Carmen and Miguel, it had shaped her siblings' entire worldview and career choices. They grew up in the shadow of her absence, and that shadow had made them into people who dedicated their lives to helping others. "There's something else," Carmen said gently. "Your grandparents are still alive, my parents and Miguel's parents. They're in their 80s now, but they never stopped believing you'd come home. They have rooms in their houses set up for you with toys and books appropriate for whatever age you might be when you returned." The image of elderly grandparents maintaining bedrooms for a missing granddaughter for 26 years was almost too much for Maya to process. Her disappearance hadn't just affected her immediate family, but an entire extended network of people who had loved her from a distance for her entire life. As the evening progressed, Maya learned about the family she'd been born into. She discovered that she inherited Miguel's love of music. He plays guitar, just as she had always been drawn to piano. She learned that Carmen's passion for education matched her own dedication to helping children. She found out that her siblings had all inherited the same stubborn determination that had driven Maya to become a pediatric nurse despite financial obstacles. But most importantly, she learned that the Rodriguez family hadn't just survived her absence, they had transformed their grief into a mission to help other families experiencing similar tragedies. Her disappearance had made them stronger, more compassionate, and more committed to making sure other children didn't suffer the same fate. As Maya prepared to leave the hotel that night, Carmen hugged her goodbye and whispered, "Thank you for surviving, Isabella. Thank you for becoming such a beautiful person despite everything that happened. We always knew that whoever was raising you was doing something right, and now we know we were correct." Walking to her car, Maya realized that she had just experienced the most profound breakthrough of her life. She had learned that love could survive decades of separation, that families could be stronger than the tragedies that tried to destroy them, and that her true identity wasn't just Maya Chen or Isabella Rodriguez. It was both, and it was entirely her own to define.
The media storm began 3 days after Maya's reunion with Carmen and Miguel. Someone had leaked the story to the press, and suddenly, the Cedar Ridge baby found after 26 years was headline news across the country. Maya woke up to find news vans parked outside her apartment building and reporters camping in the hospital parking lot where she worked. The story had everything the media loved: a decades-old mystery, a dramatic reunion, and the complex moral questions surrounding Linda's actions. But what the news reports couldn't capture was the devastating impact the sudden publicity was having on everyone involved.
Maya's phone rang constantly with interview requests from national news programs, true crime podcasts, and documentary filmmakers. The Seattle Times had somehow obtained photos of her from the hospital's website and was running a front-page story about the nurse who didn't know she was kidnapped. The attention was overwhelming and intrusive in ways Maya had never anticipated. But the media's scrutiny was nothing compared to the internal challenges Maya was facing as she tried to navigate relationships with two families simultaneously. Carmen and Miguel had extended their stay in Seattle, hoping to spend more time with Maya, but their presence was creating complications Maya hadn't expected. The first crisis came when Alex met Carmen and Miguel for dinner. Maya had been nervous about introducing her boyfriend to her biological parents, uncertain how to explain their relationship or what role Alex should play in this new family dynamic. The evening started well, with Carmen and Miguel expressing genuine appreciation for Alex's support of Maya during this difficult time. But as the conversation progressed, underlying tensions began to surface. Carmen mentioned that she had always hoped Isabella would find someone from their cultural background, someone who could understand the importance of family traditions and maintaining connections to their Mexican heritage. While she was careful to phrase it diplomatically, her meaning was clear. Alex, as a white social worker from a middle-class background, didn't fit the vision she had held for her daughter's life partner. Alex, to his credit, handled the implicit criticism gracefully, but Maya could see the hurt in his eyes. Later that evening, he confronted the issue directly. "Alex, I support you completely in getting to know your biological family, but I need to know where that leaves us. Are you planning to change your entire life to fit into their expectations? Because if you are, I need to understand what that means for our relationship." "But Alex, they're just excited to have me back. They're not trying to control my life." "Aren't they? Carmen has already suggested that you might want to move closer to Bakersfield so you can be near your siblings. Miguel keeps talking about family traditions you need to learn and cultural experiences you've missed. They're essentially asking you to become a different person, the person Isabella Rodriguez would have been if she'd never been taken." Maya realized that Alex was voicing concerns she had been trying to suppress. Carmen and Miguel's love was overwhelming and genuine, but it came with expectations and assumptions about who Isabella Rodriguez should be. They had spent 26 years imagining their lost daughter, and now they seemed to expect Maya to step into that imagined role. The situation became more complicated when Maya's siblings arrived in Seattle the following week. Carlos and Diego Rodriguez, the 23-year-old twins, were both police officers who had taken leave to meet their long-lost sister. Sofia Rodriguez, 19 and a college sophomore, had driven up from her university in Oregon. Meeting her siblings was both wonderful and overwhelming. Carlos and Diego were boisterous and protective, immediately treating Maya like the older sister they had always imagined. They shared stories about growing up in the shadow of her disappearance, about how they had always felt responsible for finding her, even though they were younger than her. Sophia was more complicated. She was brilliant, articulate, and clearly had spent years thinking deeply about the impact of Maya's absence on their family. But she was angry in ways Carmen and Miguel had carefully hidden. "I'm glad you're alive and safe," Sophia told Maya during a private conversation in a coffee shop. "But I need you to understand what your disappearance did to our family. Mom had 3 miscarriages between you and us twins because she was so stressed and traumatized. Dad developed a drinking problem that took him years to overcome. I grew up feeling like I could never be enough because there was always this perfect missing sister who everyone was trying to find."
Maya was shocked by Sophia's bluntness, but she also recognized the honesty in her words. "Sophia, I had no control over what happened to me. I was a baby. I know that, but I also know that everyone in our family has spent their entire lives defined by your absence. And now that you're back, everyone expects everything to just magically be perfect. But it's not that simple. You've had an entire life without us. You have relationships and priorities and a whole identity that doesn't include us. Meanwhile, we've been stuck in this holding pattern for 26 years, waiting for our family to be complete." Sophia's words forced Maya to confront a reality she had been avoiding. Her return wasn't just healing for the Rodriguez family, it was also disrupting a dynamic they had built their entire lives around. Carmen and Miguel had structured their marriage around the shared mission of finding their lost daughter. Carlos and Diego had chosen careers that connected them to that mission. Sophia had grown up as the replacement daughter, always competing with the memory of a missing sister. Maya's presence was forcing everyone to reconsider who they were when they weren't defined by her absence. The challenges extended beyond family dynamics. Maya discovered that her legal status was far more complicated than she had realized. Technically, Maya Chen didn't exist. All of her documents were based on false information Linda had provided. Isabella Rodriguez was legally dead, declared so after 7 years of being missing. Maya's social security number, driver's license, nursing license, and every other official document in her life were potentially invalid. A lawyer specializing in identity issues explained the complexity during a consultation Maya attended with Carmen and Miguel. "This is an unprecedented situation," the attorney said. "We're dealing with someone who was kidnapped as an infant and raised under a false identity for 26 years. Legally establishing Isabella Rodriguez's identity while maintaining Maya Chen's professional credentials and financial history is going to require extensive documentation and potentially years of legal proceedings." The lawyer continued, "There's also the question of Linda Chen's estate. If Maya's adoption was never legal, which it wasn't since it was based on kidnapping, then Maya may not have legal rights to inherit Linda's property or possess her belongings. Everything gets complicated when an entire identity is built on falsified documents." Maya felt overwhelmed by the bureaucratic nightmare ahead of her. Every aspect of her adult life, her career, her finances, her legal status, was potentially in jeopardy because of Linda's long-ago deception. But the most challenging issue was the growing pressure from Carmen and Miguel for Maya to pursue criminal charges against Linda's memory. The district attorney in Bakersfield had contacted the family about potentially reopening the kidnapping case now that they had evidence of what had happened. "Isabella, I know this is difficult, but we need justice for what was done to our family. Linda Chen committed a serious crime that destroyed years of our lives. Even though she's dead, the case needs to be resolved officially." "But what's the point? Linda is gone. Pursuing charges won't bring back the years we lost, and it will destroy her reputation. She loved me, Dad. She wasn't a monster." "She was a kidnapper," Carmen said firmly. "I understand that she loved you, and I'm grateful that she raised you well, but she stole you from us. She stole 26 years of watching you grow up, of being part of your life, of being a complete family. That's not something we can just forgive and forget." Maya realized she was caught between competing loyalties: her love and gratitude toward Linda, who had raised her, and her growing connection to the family Linda had wronged. Carmen and Miguel weren't asking her to hate Linda, but they were asking her to acknowledge the full scope of the damage Linda's actions had caused. The pressure increased when the media began investigating Linda's background more thoroughly. Reporters discovered that Linda had worked at other hospitals before Cedar Ridge General, and they began looking into whether there might be other cases of stolen children. The implication was that Maya might not have been Linda's only victim. "What if she did this before?" Carmen asked during one particularly difficult conversation. "What if there are other families out there who still don't know what happened to their children? Don't we have a responsibility to help them find answers?" Maya felt the weight of that possibility crushing down on her. If Linda had been responsible for other kidnappings, then Maya's silence about the case could be preventing other families from finding their missing children.
But investigating Linda's past also meant potentially destroying the memory of the only mother Maya had ever known. It meant acknowledging that the woman who had loved her unconditionally might have been a serial kidnapper who had destroyed multiple families. As Maya sat in her apartment one evening, surrounded by legal documents, family photos from both families, and media requests she couldn't bring herself to answer, she realized she was facing the most difficult challenge of her life. She wasn't just trying to integrate two identities, she was trying to balance the competing needs and expectations of two families, while navigating a legal and media landscape that threatened to consume everything she had built as Maya Chen. The simple joy of being reunited with her biological family was being overshadowed by the complex realities of living in the aftermath of a crime that had affected dozens of people across multiple decades. Maya was beginning to understand that finding her true identity was only the beginning of a much longer and more difficult journey toward healing and justice.
6 months after her first meeting with Carmen and Miguel, Maya stood before a federal judge in Los Angeles, officially reclaiming her identity as Isabella Rodriguez, while retaining her professional credentials as Maya Chen. The legal proceedings had been exhausting and expensive, but they had finally resolved the bureaucratic nightmare that had threatened to unravel her entire adult life. The transformation hadn't been just legal, it had been deeply personal. Maya had spent months in therapy with Dr. Rachel Morrison, a specialist in identity integration and family reunification. Through their sessions, Maya had learned to navigate the complex emotions of loving two families while honoring the vastly different circumstances that had brought them into her life. Identity isn't singular, Dr. Morrison had explained during one of their breakthrough sessions. You're not required to choose between Maya Chen and Isabella Rodriguez. You can be both simultaneously, and that duality can be a source of strength rather than confusion. The real transformation had begun when Maya made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of moving to California to be closer to the Rodriguez family, or staying in Seattle to maintain her life as Maya Chen, she had chosen a third path that nobody had considered. Maya had accepted a position with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Washington, D.C., specializing in long-term missing persons cases and family reunification. Her unique experience as both a missing child and a healthcare professional made her invaluable in helping other families navigate similar situations. I realized that my story isn't just about me, Maya explained to Carmen and Miguel during one of their regular video calls. It's about all the families who are still searching, all the children who are still missing, and all the people who are living with false identities without even knowing it. The decision to move to D.C. had initially created tension with both families. The Rodriguez family had hoped Maya would move closer to them in California, while Alex had assumed she would stay in Seattle. But Dr. Morrison had helped Maya understand that choosing her own path, rather than trying to fulfill everyone's expectations, was the healthiest way to integrate her dual identity. Alex had ultimately decided to join her in D.C., accepting a position with the Department of Health and Human Services working on family welfare cases. Their relationship had strengthened through the ordeal, particularly after Alex began attending therapy sessions to understand the unique challenges Maya faced. I realized I was trying to protect Maya from having to change, Alex admitted during one of their couples therapy sessions. But change wasn't something threatening her. It was something she needed to embrace to become whole. The most significant transformation in Maya's life came through her work with other families experiencing similar situations. Through the National Center, she had helped reunite 12 families with missing children, including 3 cases involving long-term kidnappings similar to her own. One case in particular had been both heartbreaking and healing for Maya. A woman named Jennifer Walsh had contacted the center after discovering that her deceased mother had kept documents suggesting Jennifer might have been kidnapped as an infant. The parallels to Maya's story were striking, but the outcome had been different.
Jennifer's biological family had died in a car accident years earlier, leaving her with no living relatives to reunite with. Working with Jennifer taught me something crucial, Maya explained during a speaking engagement at a conference on missing persons. Reunion isn't the only form of healing. Sometimes understanding your truth is enough, even when that truth includes loss and endings rather than happy reunions. Maya had also become involved in legislative efforts to reform how hospitals handle newborn security and how law enforcement investigates infant kidnappings. Her testimony before Congress about the long-term impact of her case had been instrumental in passing new regulations requiring enhanced security protocols in maternity wards. 26 years ago, someone walked out of a hospital with a baby and no one stopped them, Maya testified. We can't change what happened to me, but we can make sure it doesn't happen to other families. The transformation extended to her relationship with Linda's memory. Through therapy and extensive investigation, Maya had learned more about Linda's background and mental state at the time of the kidnapping. Linda had indeed worked at other hospitals, but extensive investigation by law enforcement found no evidence of other kidnappings. Linda was a deeply troubled woman who made one catastrophic decision during a period of overwhelming grief, Maya explained to a journalist writing a comprehensive article about the case. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand that she wasn't a serial predator. She was a broken person who convinced herself that one terrible act was somehow an act of love. Maya had ultimately decided not to pursue criminal charges, though she had cooperated fully with law enforcement's investigation. The case was officially closed with Linda posthumously identified as the perpetrator, but Maya chose to focus on prevention and healing rather than prosecution. This decision had been controversial within the Rodriguez family. Carmen and Miguel had initially wanted formal justice, but they had come to respect Maya's choice to prioritize moving forward over seeking retribution.
Our daughter has shown us a kind of wisdom we didn't know we needed, Miguel said during a family therapy session that included both Maya and her siblings. She's taught us that healing doesn't always require punishment, and that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. The most profound transformation had been in Maya's relationship with her siblings. Carlos and Diego had initially struggled with how to treat Maya, as an older sister they had never known or as a stranger they were just meeting. But their shared work on missing persons cases had created a bond that transcended their unusual circumstances. Carlos had transferred to a FBI unit specializing in kidnapping cases, while Diego had become an advocate for families of missing children. They regularly collaborated with Maya on cases, creating a unique partnership that combined their law enforcement perspective with her healthcare and victim advocacy experience. Sophia's relationship with Maya had been the most challenging to navigate, but ultimately the most rewarding. Sophia's initial anger about living in Maya's shadow had evolved into a deeper understanding of how trauma affects entire family systems. I realized that I wasn't angry at Maya, Sophia explained during a family gathering in D.C. where Maya was hosting everyone for Thanksgiving, the first holiday they had all spent together. I was angry at the situation, at the loss, at the way our family had been structured around absence. But Maya's return didn't fix our family, it just gave us the chance to build a new kind of family structure that includes everyone. Sophia had changed her major from social work to psychology, with a focus on family systems therapy. She planned to specialize in helping families navigate complex reunification situations. Maya's relationship with Carmen and Miguel had also evolved from the initial overwhelming reunion to a more sustainable long-term connection. They had established regular communication patterns, planned visits that didn't disrupt anyone's life, and learned to appreciate Maya's choices even when they differed from their expectations. We spent 26 years imagining who Isabella would be, Carmen reflected during one of their video calls. We had to learn to love who Maya actually is, rather than trying to make her fit our dreams of our lost daughter. The transformation wasn't without ongoing challenges. Maya still struggled with episodes of identity confusion, particularly during stressful periods. She continued therapy to manage the complex emotions that arose from living with two family histories. The media attention had gradually decreased, but she still received occasional interview requests that she had learned to decline politely. Most importantly, Maya had learned to view her unusual story as a source of strength rather than trauma. Her experience had given her unique insights into family dynamics, loss, resilience, and healing that made her exceptionally effective in her professional work. I used to think that being kidnapped was the defining tragedy of my life, Maya said during the closing remarks of her TEDx talk titled, "Finding Yourself When You Don't Know Who You Are." But I've learned that what defines us isn't what happens to us. It's how we choose to use those experiences to help others and create meaning from circumstances we never chose. Standing on that stage, wearing the crescent moon necklace Carmen and Miguel had given her and a bracelet Alex had made with both her names engraved on it, Maya embodied the integration she had worked so hard to achieve. She was simultaneously Maya Chen, the compassionate pediatric nurse, and Isabella Rodriguez, the missing daughter who had found her way home. She was also something entirely new, a person who had transformed personal trauma into professional mission and family tragedy into expanded love. As she looked out at the audience of families affected by missing persons cases, Maya realized that her transformation was complete, not because she had resolved all the complexities of her identity, but because she had learned to live fully within those complexities, while using her experience to help others navigate their own difficult journeys toward truth and healing.
3 years after standing in that hotel room and meeting Carmen and Miguel for the first time, Maya Rodriguez Chen stood at the altar of a small chapel in Arlington, Virginia, surrounded by two complete families who had learned to love each other through their shared love for her. Alex Thompson waited at the end of the aisle, tears in his eyes as he watched the woman he loved walk toward their future together. Carmen Rodriguez walked on Maya's right side, representing the family that had never stopped searching for her. On her left walked Dr. Amanda Foster, Linda's former colleague from the hospital, who had volunteered to represent the woman who had raised Maya with such devoted love, despite the circumstances of their beginning. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Maya was being escorted into her new life by representatives of both her past and her chosen family. The wedding itself was a testament to how much had changed in 3 years. Miguel Santos played guitar as Maya walked down the aisle, performing a song he had written for Isabella when she was born, but had never had the chance to play for her. Carlos and Diego Rodriguez served as ushers, their police training making them take their duties of protecting their sister's special day very seriously. Sofia Rodriguez was Maya's maid of honor, their relationship having evolved from initial tension to deep sisterly love built on mutual respect and understanding. But the most meaningful moment came during the ceremony when Maya and Alex exchanged vows they had written together, acknowledging the unique journey that had brought them to this point. "Maya," Alex said, his voice steady despite his emotions, "3 years ago, you discovered that everything you thought you knew about your identity was wrong. But watching you navigate that discovery taught me that identity isn't about where you come from, it's about who you choose to become. You chose to turn your pain into purpose, your loss into love, and your confusion into clarity. Today, I'm choosing to spend my life with someone who has shown me that the most beautiful thing about love is how it can expand to hold multiple truths simultaneously." Maya's vows were equally personal. "Alex, when I found out I was Isabella Rodriguez, I was terrified that Maya Chen would disappear, that I would lose everything I had built as myself. But you taught me that love doesn't require you to be someone else, it requires you to be more fully yourself. You loved Maya Chen, and you learned to love Isabella Rodriguez, and you helped me understand that I could be both without losing either. Today, I'm promising to spend my life with someone who sees all of me and chooses to love the complexity rather than asking me to simplify it."
The reception was held at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, where Maya now served as Director of Family Reunification Services. The venue choice wasn't accidental. Maya wanted to celebrate her personal happiness in the place where she had found her professional calling. During the reception, Carmen Rodriguez gave a speech that brought everyone to tears. 3 years ago, Miguel and I flew to Seattle believing we were going to meet our lost daughter. What we discovered was that we weren't gaining back the baby we had lost. We were gaining a remarkable woman who had grown up without us but had somehow become everything we could have hoped for our daughter to be. Maya didn't just come back to us. She expanded our understanding of what family means. She taught us that love isn't diminished when it's shared among more people. It grows stronger. The most touching moment came when Maya opened a special wedding gift from her entire extended family. Inside was a leather-bound book titled The Isabella Chronicles, a collection of letters, photos, and memories that every family member had contributed. Carmen and Miguel had written letters to Isabella for every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone they had missed. Maya's siblings had contributed artwork, school projects they had made about their missing sister, and letters they had written to her throughout their childhood. But the final section of the book contained something even more precious. Letters from families Maya had helped reunite through her work at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Dozens of parents, children, siblings, and grandparents had written to Maya to thank her for helping them find each other. The letters described how Maya's unique understanding of both sides of family separation, as someone who had been lost and someone who had searched, made her uniquely qualified to guide others through similar journeys. One letter particularly moved Maya to tears. "Dear Maya, you helped us find our son after he had been missing for 8 years. But more than that, you helped us understand how to love him when he came home changed by his experiences. You taught us that reunion isn't about going back to how things were, it's about creating something new together. Because of your guidance, our family is stronger now than it was before we lost him. Thank you for showing us that broken things can be made more beautiful than they were originally." As the evening progressed, Maya found herself reflecting on how dramatically her life had changed since that morning 3 years ago when she had found Linda's letter in the jewelry box. She was no longer the confused, isolated nurse who had discovered her entire identity was built on lies. She had become someone who helped other people navigate the complex intersection of loss, love, identity, and healing. The transformation extended beyond her personal life. Maya's work at the National Center had revolutionized how the organization approached long-term missing persons cases. She had developed new protocols for handling family reunifications, created support groups for families dealing with complex identity issues, and established training programs for social workers, law enforcement officers, and mental health professionals working with missing persons cases.
Her most significant professional achievement had been the establishment of the Isabella Protocol, a comprehensive framework for investigating cases where missing children might be living under false identities. The protocol had already led to the resolution of 17 cold cases and had been adopted by law enforcement agencies across the country. But Maya's proudest accomplishment was more personal. 6 months earlier, she and Alex had been approved to become foster parents, specializing in children who had experienced family separation or identity confusion. Their first placement was a 7-year-old girl named Emma, who had been living with relatives under a false name after her mother kidnapped her during a custody dispute. Emma reminds me that healing doesn't always look like happy reunions, Maya had explained to Sophia during one of their weekly phone calls. Sometimes it looks like helping a child understand that having a complicated family story doesn't make them broken or wrong. Sometimes it looks like showing them that love can be bigger than the circumstances that brought it into being. The wedding reception was winding down when Maya found herself standing alone for a moment, looking out at the garden behind the National Center building. In the distance, she could see the Washington Monument lit up against the night sky. 3 years ago, she had been Maya Chen, a pediatric nurse in Seattle who felt vaguely incomplete but couldn't understand why. Tonight, she was Maya Rodriguez Chen, a wife,
a daughter to two sets of parents, a sister to siblings both biological and chosen, a foster mother, and a professional advocate for missing children and their families. Carmen approached her in the garden carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "What are you thinking about, mija?" "I'm thinking about how much has changed and how much has stayed the same," Maya replied, accepting the champagne. 3 years ago, I thought finding out the truth about my identity would either destroy my life or fix it completely. I never imagined it would do something more complex, that it would expand my life in ways I didn't know were possible. "You know what I think?" Carmen said, putting her arm around Maya's shoulders. "I think Linda Chen would be proud of the woman you've become. She raised you to be kind, strong, and dedicated to helping others. She couldn't have known that those qualities would eventually help you find your way back to us. But I believe she would be happy to see how you've used everything she taught you." Maya felt tears in her eyes as she realized Carmen was right. Linda's love, despite being built on a foundation of terrible wrongdoing, had given Maya the emotional strength and moral compass that had enabled her to navigate the complex journey of the past 3 years. The kindness Linda had instilled in her had helped her forgive Linda's actions. The work ethic Linda had modeled had driven Maya to excel in her new career. The compassion Linda had taught her had enabled Maya to understand both families' perspectives and help them heal together. As Alex joined them in the garden, followed by Maya's siblings and Miguel, Maya realized she was looking at her new reality. A life that was more complex than anything she could have imagined, but also more rich and meaningful than the simpler existence she had known as Maya Chen. "You know what the best part of all this is?" Sophia said, joining the group and raising her glass. 3 years ago, we were all defined by loss, by Isabella's absence, by the trauma of what happened to our family. Tonight, we're defined by love, by what we've built together, by the families we've helped, by the future we're creating. Miguel nodded, his eyes bright with emotion. Isabella was taken from us, but Maya was given to the world. And now, somehow, we get to be part of what Maya does with the gifts she was given. As the family stood together in the garden, Maya understood that her story wasn't really about a kidnapping that happened 26 years ago. It was about the power of love to transcend circumstances, the possibility of healing that honors rather than erases complexity, and the way that individual trauma can be transformed into collective purpose. The little girl who had been stolen from Cedar Ridge General Hospital was gone forever. She had grown up to become someone else entirely. But the woman standing in that garden, surrounded by love that had been both lost and found, had learned to carry all of her stories with grace and purpose. Maya Rodriguez Chen was living proof that identity could be both singular and multiple, that families could be both biological and chosen, and that the most beautiful new realities often emerge from the places where different truths learn to coexist in love.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.